All right, fellow inhabitants of our conscious universe, I've been directed that I can share with you some new things. Most of these things I've only ever told people as it was necessary or as the Lord had driven me to at the moment. Thusly, why I'm making all these videos now versus having ever made it before. So, we're going to go back to when I started my walk, or my conscious awareness of it anyway. Now, I was living in Tulsa, and I remember that I've never really had a weak mind. I'm not saying other people are weak. I'm saying that I was very consciously aware that my mind was stronger than most. So, how do I put this? It's like I started to jump back to another time that's not important right now. So, 111 on the clock. What happened was I had carved out life on my own. My family didn't help me. The state didn't help me. I had one, two, three. I had a cookie cutter perfect life. I had a 2,800 square foot condo, prime real estate in one of the most sought after places to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I went from working at Sonic to working at Taco Bueno. I was a first assistant manager, and I had noticed that I wasn't happy. I wasn't satisfied. Well, because I had moved from Wynnewood, Oklahoma, Wynnewwood, to Tulsa, I was 17 miles outside the legal limit restriction to move without having the other person's permission. I was still allowing my son to go see his family. And as a matter of fact, I was driving him to and from those visits every other weekend and once during the off week. 222 on the clock. So check this out. They decided they were going to take me to court and take custody of him because I didn't have anybody to stick up for me. They bought my lawyer off, 234, and they paid him, God only knows how, since I had heard afterwards that he was trading sexual favors with his people's, his constituents, or whatever you want to call them, his their kids, right? For real. It's terrible. Wish I could remember the man's name because I'd put him on blast right now. He ended up moving literally minutes after court to Washington. I've never heard of him since. Whatever. Anyway, so they ended up getting custody of my son on a technicality, but this is during all of this going on, okay? I started having out of body experiences, like to the degree that I was aware, 321, I was aware I could feel that my consciousness was literally being projected and still pulling in experiences from somewhere else in all of time and space, 333. I knew it was somewhere else, okay? I knew that it was me, but in a different timeline, in a different reality. And I would catch myself sometimes saying things that didn't make sense. Yes, I noticed 345, by the way. I'm trying not to watch the clock, but anyway. I noticed that I would say things just at the most inopportune times as if I was being connected to somewhere else. I didn't know then what I know now, and that was that my timelines were collapsing. And 404, I was trying to keep myself in the current timeline that I was in. I refused to allow myself to be drawn out of sanity or set somewhere else. Now, my son, I love him. He's my everything. When they took him from me, I was doing everything I could to not allow that to affect me like they expected it to. I wasn't overworking. I was dealing with it. And apparently they didn't like that. But I remember telling God I wasn't satisfied. It wasn't okay. I didn't like what was going on. But that I wasn't happy and satisfied with my life, even though I had everything. I had 3 cars. I had a great job. Ignore that. So I had everything, right? I went to work one day. Oh, these people are ridiculous. I went to work one day, and my boss tells me, he says, he calls me before work, and he's like, it's the owner of the entire Taco Bell corporation, right? He's the one that actually built it. And the ones in Oklahoma anyway. But he tells me, he says, hey, Elizabeth, when you come in for training today, I want you to come to this location instead, I'm going to have you look over and sign some paperwork. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I'm thinking, oh God, what did I do now? And he tells me that he wants to make me partner of the Taco Bell franchise. He says, you can take the top half of the state or the bottom half of the state, whichever, I don't care. He said, I figured you probably want the bottom half of the state. That way you could be closer to your family or be closer to your son and his family, right? So God had a solution for it. 555. And that's when everything went south. I remember telling him one day, I was like, I said, I keep having these weird experiences, and it had started happening at work. That's when I got upset. That's when I started really signifying out loud to anybody else what was going on. I was like, look, I said, I keep having these weird experiences where, like, I was taking an order one day and I heard myself go from the normal spiel to saying something that was just completely, like, had nothing to do with anything. And I remember hearing the customer say, I'm sorry, what did you just say? None of that made any sense or had anything to do with anything. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm not really sure what that's about. I apologize. I said, it's just started happening. Please come to the window and I'll finish taking your order. I tell him about this and he's like, he said, it sounds to me like you've started your walk, like you've taken up your cross and you've started your walk. And that hit me when he said it. It hit me like somehow it had occurred to me. He said, I've been praying about you a lot. He said, and God's the one that told me to do this. He said, and now I understand why. He said, take your time. Whatever you need, just let me know. And whenever you're ready to come back to the company, we'll be here. And I was like, well, I'm sorry about no. He's like, no, I want you to go ahead and sign the paperwork. We're good. We're doing this. Okay, cool. That taught me that there are a lot of things that happen to us that a lot of people just write off. Oh, well, this person's going through this mental thing, or this person's just on drugs, or this person's this, or this person's that. See, the thing is, at the time, I wasn't on drugs. And it wasn't tearing my heart up what they were doing. And I wasn't giving up. And I wasn't going to give in. I knew that kid was counting on me because he couldn't count on none of them to act right and do right and be right. But if mom was going to show him what it was like to really exist and be prepared for the world and not let the world eat him up, I had to be able to do it step by step. I'm just saying, maybe people should really consider that whenever something happens that doesn't make any sense, you should get to know the person. Like, really, not judge them. Seek out what the problem is, pray on it, figure it out. Because, see, he had already been praying on it. He had already heard about it. And it had only happened 3 times. I remember that. It only happened 3 times. But he happened to hear about it and had been praying on it. And God told him right then when I told him about it what it was. And that's how I knew that there was something going on with me. And that God had answered me, even without me knowing that that's what he was doing. So do what God says to do. Seek him first. Pray on it. Be earnest about it. Really care. Not because it affects you, but because it affects the other person. That's the right way, the right kind of heart to have. Anyway, I'll tell y'all more about all this later. Love y'all.